There are many ways to shoot using the available light as our primary light source, then blending in a little flash to even out the exposure and the color, and provide a little sparkle in our images too. This is called Qflash, and it's proven to be a bit of a troublemaker in the digital age. But the Qflash gives us a few different ways to make Qflash much easier. Let me show you how.
Lesson 9. Qflash made easy with auto mode.
Qflash is a professional's way to take lousy available light like this and add just enough Qflash on camera to make an image like this. And a pro needs to be able to repeat these terrific results anywhere. This used to be easy to do back when we shot color negative film, but now because of digital capture sensitivity to under and overexposure, it's a challenge. Adding flexible Qflash to your photographic skills requires a lot of flash power, probably more than you may think. And you may discover that it's also easiest to shoot Qflash not in TTL mode, but in auto or manual exposure modes. The Qflash has not only a powerful auto exposure mode, but it has the technology to perform Qflash better than any other flash you can find. It's called the sensor limit, and it is an amazing tool. When you set your Qflash to auto exposure mode, it ignores all the TTL exposure info from your camera and it goes it alone by measuring the light of the flash plus the available light by the use of this cool little sensor right here. One reason why it's so great for Qflash is that we can actually limit how far away this sensor sees the light. Watch this. Say we have our subjects here with shadows on their faces, and there's a big old golf course and a sunny day behind them. To make this image sing, we can add a little Qflash using TTL or auto mode, but the difference between the bright sky and the dark shadows on the subjects is just too great for the system to handle, and the subjects won't get enough flash. So let's use the technology inside the Qflash to solve this problem for us, so we can concentrate on making great pictures instead of thinking about exposure problems. We want to tell the Qflash's light sensor to ignore the bright scene way back there and make a great exposure here on our subjects. To do that, we'll set the Qflash's sensor's eyesight to see the scene that I'm shooting and skip the rest. Now from my camera position here, I'm about 8 feet away from my subjects. So if I set the Qflash's sensor limit to see out 10 feet away, I'll have my subjects covered, I'll have great flash, and it'll forget about the light that's behind them. Here's where we press the mode button and tap the up or down arrows to get to the auto mode. Then tap the options button here to bring up the options menu and press set once. Now notice that the sensor limit value will blink. By default, the sensor limit is set to infinity, so we'll turn the sensor limit down by using the down arrow to 10 feet. Now we'll have all the Qflash exposure technology working for us from the camera all the way back 10 feet away, and it'll ignore the light past 10 feet. To set up the camera for this shot, I'll use manual exposure on my camera, but I certainly could use shutter priority exposure mode if the clouds were moving in and out. Next, I'll set the ISO to 100 to keep the background from getting too overexposed, and I'll shoot at f8 at a 250th of the second shutter speed. I'll also use single area autofocus and my good old spot metering setting for my Qflash. I've chosen the Quantum Turbo 2x2 because of its large power capacity, and I'm going to connect it to the camera using the D adapter for my specific camera, and I'm going to use the Quantum Qflash T5d-R fitted with the standard Qflash reflector. I'm going to snap on the standard diffuser, and I'm going to hold it all together with my favorite camera bracket that allows me to rotate the camera between horizontal and vertical positions while leaving the Qflash above the lens. Once I power up the Qflash, it will read the aperture and the ISO setting from the camera through the D adapter, and I'm ready to go. To make adjustments to the exposure value of the Qflash, we will simply use the auto fill function that's controlled by the D adapter's fill dial. You'll notice that the dial is set to its default 0 position. And when we do that, the fill portion of the control panel reads 0. This is where the Qflash is trying to give you equal amounts of flash and equal amounts of available light blended together. But what if you want only a little bit of flash blended with the available light? Then turn the dial to the left and see the control panel change to a negative number. That tells you that it's reducing the power of the Qflash in 1/3 stop increments to give you a shot that looks more like this. Or what if you prefer a shot with more fill flash? You like a bright fill. Then turn the dial to the right and add more fill flash, also in 1/3 stop increments, to see the control panel reveal a positive number. It'll give you a fill flash that looks more like this.
Tips from a pro.
There's lots to learn about fill flash. Let me show you some shortcuts. If you have a breezy day where the clouds are moving in and out, making the day brighter and darker, try using your camera's shutter priority exposure mode to control the exposure of the background for you. Then set your Qflash to auto mode to control the rest. To do this, set the shutter to the fastest speed that you can get the flash to sync at without using any of the high-speed sync functions on some of the more advanced cameras. Now on this camera, its limit is 1/250th of a second for flash sync. Next, I'll keep the ISO setting low. Typically, you'll find a value between 100 and 320 will work best for you when you're shooting outdoors. And finally, try moving up from the standard spot meter setting to the next wider metering pattern. And use the center focus autofocus point because it may help out the whole shutter priority exposure system in controlling that background for you, depending, of course, on which camera you're using. And don't forget the old sensor limit setting. That's the key to making autofill flash work.